Welcome to the Take 2 Teacher Instruction Material Training for 4th through 5th grade reading. Today we will review the following items in this training: Take 2 program description, instructional material components, reading focus standards, reading daily overview, reading instructional block, components of instructional material. Program description. Take 2 for elementary gives 4th through 5th grade students an opportunity to retake the end of grade test. Prior to the readministration of the test, students will be provided 8 days of instruction in reading. The EOG for reading will be readministered the second to last day of the program. The instructional materials for the program are as follows. There will be a teacher workbook and a student workbook. The teacher's workbook will include reading focus standards, reading daily overview, reading daily schedule breakdown, and daily lessons. For the student workbook, we'll have reading daily overview and daily lessons. Reading focus standards. The focus standards, or the heavily weighted standards, are as follows. This will be our focus for the next 8 days of instruction. For 4th grade, our reading literature is 30 to 34% of our end of grade test. Reading information text is 45 to 49% of the test, and language is 19 to 21% of the test. These will be our 3 focus areas for 4th grade. For 5th grade, we will have the same focus areas: reading literature, which is 36 to 40% of the test, reading informational text, which is 37 to 41% of the test, and language, which is 21 to 25% of the test. Daily overview. In your instruction material, you will see a page that looks like this. This is what we're calling the daily overview. This is a sample daily overview for 4th grade. In the daily overview, you will see the standard, the date, the weight of the question, and the content. And it's broken out by each day. So if you notice, the first day is 614, and it goes all the way to 623. On the first day, you'll see 614, which is the date, the standard, which is RI 4.1, the weight of that standard, which is 45 to 49% of the test, and then about how many questions that will be, which is 3 to 6 questions, and then the name of that unit. So the name of the first unit for 4th grade is Supporting Inferences About Informational Text. And this is the sample for 5th grade. Like we said, for the first day, you'll see the date, the standard, the weight, and the number of questions. So for example, RL 5.1 is 36 to 40% of the test, which is about 4 to 7 questions on an end of grade test. And then the name of that particular unit is Using Detail to Support Inference and Literary Texts. The daily schedule for 4th and 5th grade will be 120 minutes or 2 hours. That 2 hours is broken up as follows. You have 30 minutes for extended reading passage implementation, 40 minutes for modeled and guided instruction, a 10-minute brain buster, which is an energizer or a break for students. Then we move into 20 minutes of independent practice, and then 20 minutes of review independent practice. Daily lesson. So the first part of the lesson, which is 30 minutes, is what we're calling extended reading passage implementation. This gives students an opportunity to read text and to be able to hear teachers read that text and answer questions and receive explicit instruction around how to answer a question. Sometimes students are able to read the text, but they're not able to understand what questions are asking them. And so this gives the teacher an opportunity to explain some of the thinking behind what happens when you're trying to answer a question, and giving students an opportunity to do that in a gradual release type model. The next part of the lesson, which is modeled and guided instruction, is an opportunity for teachers to explicitly teach thinking as far as how to tackle this particular concept. It also gives students an opportunity to work with partners to be able to address that particular standard. In this modeled and guided instruction piece, the final piece of that is what they're calling in guided practice. So your guided instruction gives students an opportunity to work in partners and figure out that learning. Your guided practice is your last opportunity for students to be able to practice this concept before moving on into independent work. So although we encourage guided instruction to be a collaborative effort, you really want your guided practice to be an opportunity to make sure that each student is being accountable, to make sure each student understands the concept. This is really also important for teachers to circulate to make sure that students understand, not just in a group setting, but when it's time to work independently, making sure students understand the concept before moving them on to that independent practice. And in between, we have what we're calling our brain buster, which is based on the story that you read either in your models or guided instruction section, using some of the information that's in your instructional packet to get kids to answer questions either about the text in a fun way. And teachers are given the opportunity to either have them work in teams or collaboratively. But this is just a brain break for kids, and that it's related to the concept. Then we move on to independent practice in small group. So only students who have a firm understanding of the lesson should move on to independent practice. While students are moving on to independent practice, teachers should be pulling students based on need. And the first students you should pull is based on those who struggled with guided practice. What you want to do is make sure they have a firm understanding and quickly moving them on to independent practice. But you don't want kids to move to independent practice who do not understand the concept. So meeting with those students briefly to see if you can figure out where the holes are in their learning so that they can move on to independent practice. This is also an opportunity for teachers to pull students based on a unit assessment or an observed area of need, really trying to make sure that students have a firm understanding of those heavily weighted standards before they move on to the next concept or to the re-administered EOG. And then the final part of the instructional block is review independent practice. So what you want to do is really look at the answers for the independent practice and do the answer analysis section, which is a part of each lesson. It really explains some of the misconceptions that a student might have come across when answering a question and really trying to address those misconceptions and clearing that up. Having conversations with students is very important during this time, either having them have conversations with you or with each other and listening to that conversation to understand their thought process behind answering the questions or how they answered the questions, and really explicitly showing them what they should have done to answer that question correctly. The clearing up of misconceptions is a major piece of that sometimes leads students to the wrong answer, and a lot of times if you can clear up that misconception, then they will be able to answer that question and future questions correctly. So this is a sample of what a daily schedule would look like. Again, it has the standard and the lesson, and it breaks it out by minutes, but also what's expected through each block, and where you can find that information in your instructional material. Now, with the materials that's provided, teachers are not expected to do any planning, but we are asking that you make sure that you're reading the material prior to the day's lesson. That's very important. So really understanding what the lesson is teaching, understanding some of those key points and stories is very important. Making sure that you're grading assessments prior to the next day, especially since it will be a big component of what you teach the next day. And if you have any questions or concern, please contact Judy Parks. You can see her information on the screen. Thank you very much.